Well, it was no surprise after qualifying that a Mercedes went on to win the Australian Grand Prix here at Albert Park. But perhaps the identity of the winning driver was, as it was Valtteri Bottas who took the lead from teammate Lewis Hamilton at the start and won by almost 21 seconds. A real surprise there for everyone expecting Lewis Hamilton to open the season with another win. I'm joined here in Albert Park by Andrew Van Leeuwen. We've got a few revellers still making their way back in the background, so hopefully they won't interrupt things. But it's been a great day here in Melbourne. But Andrew, were you expecting this from Bottas?
Ed, I can honestly say I wasn't. And as you referenced, we saw a bit of a revival from Mercedes, let's call it, in terms of their pace in comparison to Ferrari. I guess we got a hint on Friday that maybe they'd made some ground. Yesterday they went and locked out the front row, so that was a pretty good sign that they were on top of things. But you still would have thought that it was going to be Lewis Hamilton that went on to win that race. So I guess it was still a surprising result, and not just the result itself, but just how dominant Valtteri was across that race.
Well, you could put a little asterisk against it. You could say Lewis Hamilton had a little bit of floor damage that manifested itself about lap 4, he said. It was a little bit of rear downforce lost, so that meant the car balance was a bit out. But we should also note that in qualifying, Valtteri was quick. His ideal lap was only 6,000 off Lewis Hamilton's pole position lap. So this is a Valtteri Bottas who is quick, who's really hit the ground running in what could be the defining moment of his career.
That's absolutely right, and he made a cryptic radio message at the end of the race. I won't go into details in exactly what he said because this is a family show, but to use an Australian term, he seems to have brought a bit of mongrel to his game this year. There seems to be an edge to him that maybe we haven't seen before, and maybe that's the key for Valtteri to perhaps take it to Lewis Hamilton this year. Maybe that's what we're going to see.
I think that's really good if we see that, because I've always had a high regard for Valtteri Bottas. I was really pleased when he got the Mercedes chance. Just a little bit disappointed that both the 2 seasons he's had seem to sort of kind of tail off. He hasn't quite been able to do it. There have been some great high moments, and yeah, last year with a bit of luck going his way, or rather luck not going against him, he could have won a few races. But to see that bit of edge, that bit of ruthlessness, which is what separates the good drivers from the great, is really, really encouraging. And I bet he's over the winter gone back and thought, I'm going to really work at this. I want this. I'm not just going to be a guy who's won a few Grand Prix. I'm going to go back in. I'm the man in possession of this seat. I'm going to hit the ground running and show why I'm right in a Mercedes. And all credit to him. I think it's brilliant to see.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think what's really important is that he's actually gone and executed it, because it's fine to sit there in the off-season and go, this is what I want to do, and I've got the opportunity, and there's no reason I can't be as quick as Lewis. But you've got to do it. And he's done it. And he's done it in the very first race of the season. And that gives you the momentum going forward. And that's what he didn't have if we think back to what happened this time 12 months ago. Start your season on the right foot. Who knows what can happen?
Well, that's what Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team boss, said. He said that he's worked with drivers for a long time. He's worked with Bottas for a good few years. And he said he doesn't know what it is in a driver's mind that allows someone like Bottas to go through what he went through last year and to come back kind of this almost new driver. We always knew he had the pace. And top Formula 1 drivers, they've all got good pace. But it's in here that the difference is really made, and I think that's what we saw today. But we should say Lewis Hamilton wasn't too disappointed with things, had some damage, a nice comfortable second place, points in the bank. Solid start, isn't it?
Or you would think after testing, when everyone was saying that Ferrari had an edge and they were going to be really tough to beat in this very first phase of the season, Lewis was probably expecting to drop points anyway. So he's come here and he's dropped them to his teammate. He'll probably be happy with that, because at least he knows the car's quick. At least here the car was quick. They've kicked things off on the right foot, and they're not that gulf behind Ferrari, or at least the indication here is they're not that gulf behind Ferrari that perhaps a lot of people were expecting that they were.
Well, exactly. I mean, testing, there's been lots of talk about sandbagging, etc., but everybody believed, all the internal analysis, the private internal analysis done by all the teams, had Ferrari a bit ahead. Mercedes thought they were ahead, genuinely. And then we've come here, and it's not just that Mercedes have been ahead, they've absolutely bossed it. You know, we saw Max Verstappen in third place. He passed Vettel. So, you know, it was not far off a minute that Sebastian Vettel was down behind race winner Valtteri Bottas at the end. So what on earth is happening with Ferrari?
I think the most telling comment came from Mattia Binotto when he was asked by our own Scott Mitchell whether he expected to come here and have cars finishing 4th and 5th, and he said no. Things have changed so much from winter testing for them, and they can't really explain it at the moment. But it's not like the downforce hasn't disappeared. It can't have disappeared. So there was a lot of talk from the Ferrari drivers afterwards about perhaps not being in the setup window, and it seems that we're looking at a setup issue here. They haven't got things right for this track, and we've been talking all week since before the race weekend started about how unique this circuit is and how it does throw outliers up every now and then. And perhaps it's not so much that it was an outlier for Mercedes in terms of their pace, but it was an outlier for Ferrari not getting it right. They just didn't quite get into the setup window this weekend, and that's what cost them. Because you would think it would be unlikely that they've just forgotten how to make downforce ever since Barcelona, and you've got Sebastian Vettel saying it feels totally different.
That's exactly it. And I think this is an unusual circuit. We did see Ferrari ultimately on pace here last year, even though Sebastian Vettel won. The margin was similar. It surprised me because I said after Friday I expect Ferrari to find gains into Saturday. They found the tiniest gain, they found about a 10th, but they didn't find anything approaching what I was expecting. So it's not just a simple question of troubleshooting. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens in Bahrain. We should also say on Ferrari, Charles Leclerc's debut, he finished 5th behind Sebastian Vettel, had a bit of a go at passing him at the start, couldn't quite, and ended up slipping behind Max Verstappen. But then, late in the race when Vettel was struggling, of course there was quite a big offset because Leclerc had stayed out much longer on his set of starting tyres, and then he was given the instruction to, can you just sit behind him, please?
Well, I think that says so much about their race because they're running 4th and 5th and they're playing the ultimate safe game. And they said that at the end. That instruction was about not taking any risks at all. And they were in the perfect opportunity to try and get an extra point for the fastest lap. And it was talked about in the camp, do we have a go at this? But at the end of the day, it was no risk. Bank some points, let's try again next time out because we didn't get it right here. And Mercedes have run away with this one. But let's live to fight another day, bank some points, and think about the big picture in terms of what's going to happen later in the season.
And it says a lot when we're talking about playing it safe, and that there was a bit of radio chatter about whether Bottas would go for that fastest lap. Of course, fastest lap worth a point now this year, and he was able to and get that on fairly old tyres. So even with them being a little bit careful, they were still able to go for it. They didn't want to make an extra pit stop to do it, but he could do it on those tyres. We should talk about Red Bull, Max Verstappen. This is Honda engine's first podium in Formula 1 since the 2008 British Grand Prix, the wet race won by Lewis Hamilton. Had a great opportunistic podium there, but it wasn't on merit certainly because it was poor that year. But this is a huge boost. Max Verstappen said, "Now at least we can fight."
Yeah, look, and it's just got to relieve a lot of pressure, doesn't it, to come into the first race? And we talked about that with Valtteri Bottas as well. You work for something and then you make it happen straight away and you go, right, we're capable of it. It can work for us. So, look, great result for Max Verstappen, and I guess it's going to be interesting to see where they do end up. I mean, is he a factor in this title fight?
It's going to be hard to be a factor in the title fight, but I think, and we thought this after testing, a Honda engine is going to win a Grand Prix this year, maybe more than one. They're certainly no worse off. They may be better off than Renault. So this is a great start for that partnership. It's good for Formula 1 because Honda came in, all their struggles. There's talk of it putting off other engine manufacturers coming in. But now we've shown actually, Honda can come in and compete and do well. And Red Bull are delighted, Honda are delighted. Really good start. They're strong in the speed traps all weekend. Speed traps are always a little bit misleading because it's only a snapshot. But it's never a bad thing to be quick in the speed traps regardless of what the setup situation is. So, and I think it's going to be really fascinating to see when we get onto Bahrain how those top 3 teams line up. Can Ferrari find some of that pace? Mercedes have certainly improved the car in terms of their understanding since the second test. Of course, that massive upgrade package there for the second test. They've got on top of that, so we know they're there. Where's Red Bull? Who knows? Fantastic story. And of course, it's not just about the battle up front. We knew from testing that there was going to be a really close battle in the midfield, and so it proved. But of course, it was won by Kevin Magnussen in the Haas in 6th place, taking the result that he and teammate Romain Grosjean failed to do last year. Now, of course, the problem last year was the wheel nut problem in the pits. Not absolutely identical problem, but a certain feeling of familiarity.
Far too similar. So I was in the mix zone when Romain Grosjean came through after the race. I was the first to actually get to him. And I kind of stumbled over the question because I didn't quite know how to phrase, can you believe this has happened again? So I mentioned something about deja vu, and straight away he said, yep, I just can't believe this has happened again. And it's 3 years in a row he hasn't been able to get a result here. He's dropped a lot of points. He was in a position to score a lot of points. And obviously he talked about the fact that other teams are going to bring upgrade packages. It's important for them to score early, and they've missed a great opportunity to do that. I guess with Kevin Magnussen's result, he was so happy after qualifying yesterday. It's no great surprise that he ended up at the front of that midfield battle, because he's sitting there going, I can't believe I don't have the fastest car in the field, let alone the best car in the midfield. So good result for him, good result for the team in terms of what they did last year, but still, how disappointing that they didn't have 2 cars up there scoring those sorts of points.
Yeah, they should have done. Of course, Grosjean was running up there. They swapped positions, the Haas. Grosjean had qualified ahead, but he slipped behind Kevin Magnussen at the start. But his pit stop even before the wheel problem later on, his pit stop was already long, so he'd lost track position. He was up against it. But we should say, Renault, Nico Hülkenberg was 7th, but Daniel Ricciardo, so many fans here at Albert Park. You can still see various people with yellow hats walking around, really getting behind their local hero, but it couldn't have gone much worse for him, could it?
He barely made it to the start-finish line before it all went wrong. Quite interesting. So he's put 2 wheels off the track on the run to turn 1. He was reacting to Sergio Perez, who had made a slow getaway in front of him and had moved over to the right. He felt that he had to go right to make sure there was room there. What he didn't factor in was that there was going to be a gutter off the circuit, and it's just torn the front wing off the car, and his race is done right there and then. He carries on for a while, eventually retires with a problem that they haven't said exactly what it was yet. But his race was over on the spot there. And the big question is, did he really need to have those wheels off the track? I mean, if you look at the footage, you'd say no. It looks like there's space there. And Perez actually straightens the car up after he makes an initial move to the right. Speaking to Daniel after the race, he said that he was trying to play... He was just trying to be safe. He wanted to make sure that Perez was not going to keep coming. He felt that it was safe to drop those wheels. Obviously, he had no idea the gutter was there, and it couldn't have gone worse for him. So I think if he'd stayed on track, he could have been. He made a good start. He could have been fighting around where Hülkenberg is, and again, they're scoring good points, and they're sort of about where we thought they'd filter into the midfield. But instead, it's no points. And even if his retirement was nothing to do with that early crash, it was going to cost him. It cost him a result.
No, exactly, and I think when he studies the replay of what happened, he'll look at it and think, it's unfortunate it happened for a reason, but he'll be kicking himself. We know what he's like. He's a cheery character, but there's real steel and determination there. He won't be happy with that. Lance Stroll for Racing Point, 9th place on the right side of strategy, and actually drove a good race. He was unfortunate in qualifying with traffic, but did a good job there to get the get the penultimate point ahead of Daniel Kvyat and the Toro Rosso, of course, who passed Pierre Gasly in the Red Bull just after the pit stop. So we did see in this race that it took a little bit of time to get the rears working out of the pits, so that made him a little bit vulnerable to Kvyat, who'd stopped a little bit before and his tyres were really in the window, and then Pierre Gasly ended up 11th. Disappointing Red Bull start for him, obviously. Other stories, McLaren, Carlos Sainz retired early on. Lando Norris, decent debut, but ended up stuck behind Giovinazzi in this Alfa Romeo train that livened up the race. Yeah,
that's exactly right. I think Lando will still be pretty happy with this weekend based on what he did yesterday. That was a fantastic showing from him on debut. Carlos Sainz, I mean, that's worrying that the Renault engine, that we're seeing problems like that at the start, and we don't know what the Ricciardo issue is as well.
Well, it was an MG UK that went for Carlos Sainz Jr., and he was enthusing yesterday when asked about it. He was saying, Renault have really made a performance step. The concern is they've made a performance step. Has it come at the expense of reliability? Now, Renault reliability hasn't been perfect, but it wasn't too bad outside of Red Bull last year, and this is a worry because there have been other glitches in testing as well.
He didn't seem to have read from the PR playbook when he was talking after the race and saying, no, this is a one-off, I'm fully confident. I'm as confident as I was yesterday. There was definitely a sense of, I hope this is a one-off, and I hope we're still in as good a position as I thought we were yesterday. But there was a sense that I think he was pretty disappointed with how that went today.
But the great thing is, that midfield, it is tight. Everyone was able to fight for points. Lando Norris could have got a point. He was one of the people who stopped in that earlier phase. In fact, Kimi Räikkönen was the one who kicked off that run of pit stops because he got a tear off caught in the car. So that caused some cooling problems, so they brought him in. It's amazing how one thing like that can trigger that, and that effectively not wrecked Norris's race, but made it very, very difficult because track position is king here, and we saw it was difficult to overtake. We've got these new rules. We weren't expecting a massive difference, and I don't think we really saw it around here, did we?
Well, it's Albert Park. It's hard to overtake here. It's always going to be. I don't think that you could do anything with the rules, and it's going to be difficult to pass here because there's just not those clear stop corners where you bring the car up the inside of another car and try and get by. It's interesting, just coming back to McLaren, I mean, we spoke earlier in the week about how tight that midfield battle was. Actually, we've been talking about it all week. But McLaren was sort of the question mark as to whether they fit into that or not, because we were talking about, there's Williams and there's the midfield battle and then there's the top three, and where does McLaren fit in the back there? But they're in that fight. They seem to be genuinely in that fight, so that just makes that amazing midfield battle that little bit better.
Yeah, here they didn't quite expect to be in Q3. Situation, good performance by Norris and by the team meant that they were, but the important thing is that it's tight and it's close. I had a chat to Gilles de Fran, the sporting director, after the race, and he's trying to be very, very careful about it, but they're happy that they've got a platform they can work from. Sainz, when I asked him about it, said, the only thing we've got to make sure is we don't fall into the trap of last year, where they threw bits at the car, there was a fundamental problem, so they weren't gaining performance. If they can avoid that, with where they are now, they've at least got a platform that they can fight for points fairly consistently this season. Now, by old McLaren standards, that doesn't sound great, but after where they were, this is a kind of new start for them. So I think that's perfectly respectable and decent for them. You know, a good performance. And when you look at where Williams is, down the back, obviously Robert Kubica made his return. He got some front wing damage early on. You know, hard work for him, but the culmination of an amazing journey for him. First Grand Prix start in 8 years. So that's still a tinge of sadness about it, but still a feel-good story. And George Russell, on his debut, you know, did what he could with the car, but, you know, Williams in all sorts of trouble.
I believe he referred to it as, just practice sessions or a testing session for when they get on top of the fundamental issue that's now come to light that there is with the car. So George Russell was saying, I got through it, I physically got through it, I made it to the end, that's great, but didn't sort of feel there was anything to fight with. And these are the comments that Williams drivers have been making the last couple of years. You're not going out there to race, you're going out there to do the laps and get to the end and see what we can maybe do next time.
Well, it's been a massively storied race here. It's been fascinating to watch. Great win from Valtteri Bottas. I guess the big question is this going to be the form for the rest of the season? It's very, very clear that Mercedes are up at the front. How close can Ferrari get? Can they get up with them when they've got the car working? And what can Red Bull Honda do? Fantastic start here at Albert Park. We'll be in Bahrain in a few weeks to see what happens on a slightly more orthodox circuit, shall we say, and really find out what the pattern is competitively for the season, but what a season it's going to be.